Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for July 20th to the 26th, which was also most of the reading rush. This week I read 7 books, I watched 6 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. Technically the reading rush ends today, but my reading week is Sunday through Saturday, so I always do it in about 6 days instead. The first 2 items I read this week were not for the reading rush because I read them last Sunday, the first one being Heavy Vinyl Y2KO. This is the second volume of Heavy Vinyl, and this takes place in 1999, right before 2000 hits. And I don't want to really ruin anything for the people that haven't read the first comic, so what I can tell you is this is about a group of girls, some of them queer, which we all know I'm here for, working in a record store. They're in a band together, and then they also have another big secret, which is very cool. These comics revolve around music and feminism and just being badasses and cute little romances, and I'm obviously a big fan. This week I also read Blackbird Volume 1. This is a graphic novel about this girl who has this vision when she's 10 years old that something bad is going to happen, and her family thinks that she's nuts, they think that she's foolish, she's just being a baby, and then all of a sudden there is this huge thing that happens, and she sees this mystical thing, and everybody else also sees this mystical thing, but everybody else also forgets about it. It's about magic and family and addiction, and it's got some twists and turns. The art is absolutely stunning, so I can highly recommend it for that. The first thing that I read for the reading rush is the Duchess deal. I actually read a whole chunk of this while I was sitting on camera doing a live stream at the very beginning of the week. I just sat in front of the camera and read for 4 hours and live streamed it. It was kind of fun. This is my first Tessa book, and I laughed so hard, especially when somebody decided to say that a dress looked like unicorn vomit. I was absolutely sold. I'm probably going to read everything Tessa has ever written. This book is about a girl who is a seamstress, and she needs to be paid for the work she's done on this unicorn vomit dress. She hasn't been paid for her work because the wedding was called off, so she wears the dress to the groom's house and is like, hey, I need to be paid for this work. And he says, you look disgusting, unicorn vomit, etc. But also I need a wife, so wanna be my wife? It's a whole marriage of convenience plot, but it's very sexy, it's very sex positive, it's wonderful. Just go read it. I need to read the rest of the series. After that I read a poetry collection called I Am Not Your Final Girl, which is a collection of poems about final girls in horror movies, which sounded really cool, and then I realized that I hadn't actually watched most of the movies that these poems are based on, and they're based on specific girls from specific movies, and because of that, and because I don't usually connect to poetry really strongly really quickly anyway, this just really wasn't for me. However, it did make me want to watch all of these films and then read the corresponding poem right afterwards, so maybe I will do that in the future. After that, I finished Only Mostly Devastated, which is a Grease retelling that has an MM romance, and it was wonderful. Like all the best retellings, this had hints of the original placed throughout it in very funny and strategic ways, but it also elevated the original and it brought its own flavor to it, which I very much admired. Mostly in my bathtub, I also read The Other F Word, which is a collection of essays about fat acceptance and fat phobia and that type of thing. I believe there were about 30 different authors in this, some I knew and some I didn't, and I very much enjoyed going through all of these bits of poetry and bits of art and essays, and now I just want to follow every single person on the list, which reminds me that I need to go back through all the author pages and do just that. This week I also read No Man of Woman Born, which is a fantasy short story collection where all the protagonists are non-binary and or trans. This collection was made to subvert certain tropes that you will see throughout things. You might recognize the title from a certain Scottish play, and this collection basically aimed to take those tropes and redo them in a much more interesting way that had to do with non-binary folk, and I really enjoyed it for that. Regardless of the fact that I needed to do so much reading this week, I also got to see a lot of different TV shows. I don't really have a lot of interesting thoughts about the 6 TV shows I watched this week, so I'm just going to tell you what they were. I watched a few episodes of Scandal, I watched an episode of Luke Cage, the next episode we watch is the season finale. I watched 1 episode of Walking Through History, which was fun. I watched a few episodes of The Crown with my best friend because I saw her for the first time since March. I of course watched this week's episode of Canada's Drag Race, and I watched a bunch of more episodes of Jeopardy, which just made me feel very unintelligent because the questions go by so quickly. The movie I watched this week is something I've been meaning to watch for a very long time, and I finally tracked down a copy, and that's Paris is Burning. This is a documentary shot in the 80s, released in 1990, about the Harlem Ball scene. It made me realize a couple of different things. Half of the things that RuPaul says on RuPaul's Drag Race are quotes directly from this documentary, and the costume work and set decoration in Pose is spot on amazing. If you're at all interested in drag, you need to track down this movie. And finally, we come to a book that is probably my most anticipated read of the year. When I did the mid-year book freakout tag, I can't believe that I missed talking about this book. Finally got to listen to A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. This is a sequel, and I cannot talk too much about it because it would ruin things that happen in the first book. What I can tell you about this one is it has multiple perspectives, which means that the audiobook is a full cast audiobook, which was amazing. We had the same voice actress from last time, from the first book, come back. We also had a couple of voice actors that I've heard of before, also including at one point the author. So obviously that production element of it for me was amazing. There was also an interview at the end between Hank Green and Cory Doctorow talking about some of the themes in the book that you can only get if you listen to the audiobook, so I found that pretty valuable. I also went out yesterday and bought myself a copy of the book because I knew I was going to want a copy anyway. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some of you have asked if there's a way to financially support me, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, so that is linked down below, as well as the link to my PayPal, as well as my Amazon wishlist. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!